and welcome back to another episode of the RevRx podcast. My name is Chad Potts, and I'm your host. Today, I'm so excited for you to meet my new friend, Courtnee Stagner. If you don't know about her, she is a social media influencer. Her and her husband have really taken off as content creators. But one of the things I love about what Courtnee's doing is she's using her platform not for personal gain, but she's using her platform to spread the good news of the gospel. Today, we're going to dive into her testimony. We're going to talk about what happened when a girl that was born and raised in the Bible Belt really didn't understand about Christianity, what it took for her life to turn around, and the difference that Jesus Christ has made in her life today. We're going to dig into the basics of following Jesus. We're going to talk about Bible study. We're going to talk about prayer. We're going to talk about if it's important or not to go to a local church, or can you just do Christianity on your own? We're going to dig into some of those tough things, but you're going to love the authenticity and just how open and honest Courtnee is about her walk and her experience with a God that never left her, that continued to pursue her, and who changed her life and is continuing to do so even today. So without further ado, I introduce to you my friend, Courtnee. Courtnee, what a privilege it is to have you here on the RevRx podcast. Finally, right?
All right. Thank you.
We've missed each other back and forth a little bit. And I tell you what, I told you before, this is going to be epic when we get it.
Well,
and I can't wait for today.
I will make sure it's epic.
Absolutely. Well, Courtnee, I started following you and your husband, Justin, on social media not long ago. You guys have really taken off. You're influencers. And I just told you how much I appreciate the positive, encouraging messages you guys put out there. You're bringing laughs to people. We need that, man. In a world that's so shaken right now by division and hate and all that, sometimes it's just refreshing to turn it on and be like, all right, what's Courtnee and Justin doing today?
That's all. That is our main goal. As long as we can make people laugh. I get messages all the time saying, you have no idea what your content means to me. And that is why we do it.
That's incredible. But I want to give you an opportunity to just tell us, who is Courtnee? How'd you get here today? I know it's kind of a loaded question, but just give us the overview of how did you get to this place to where you have now reached your peak on the RevRx podcast?
Well, thank you for having me. I feel very honored. I can't believe I'm actually being asked to be on podcast. That is amazing to me. So it started out, I am a nurse practitioner. I have a husband who has always wanted to do comedy. We would try to go viral so many times, and he just couldn't get his little niche. What would go viral? So one day I was doing Bible study at the kitchen table, and I said something like, somebody is hogging something. And he said, did you just say hogging? And I said, yeah. And he said, you mean hogging? Like they're hogging it? And I said, yeah. He goes, say that again. And he recorded me, and it ended up being uploaded to TikTok, and it took off.
Wow.
And he said, well, if she can take off, I'm way funnier than she is. So he said, let's kind of do more of a Southern grandpa type of figure. And his grandfather is so funny. And so his character, the Southern grandpa, is kind of built off of that. And so he started getting followers. And of course, people followed me because I would be in the videos. And I said, well, I'm getting all these followers. Why don't I try to target a different demographic? So we did the medical terminology, because me and his best friend Jake are both nurse practitioners, and we would talk medical to each other when we would see each other. And he would like, oh yeah, I know what that means. And so he said, let's kind of do that. Let's do medical terms, but let me do the comedy thing. And he said, and we can just have like more of a couples medical, kind of get that demographic. And so we did that, and I had no idea it would take off the way that it did. We haven't done one in a while, but we've had a lot going on, but people have just been asking. So we're going to have to put some out there soon. But that's kind of where we are.
As a pharmacist, I have a request, right? Do you take
Sure,
requests?
Yes, anything.
Let's do some drug names, right? Because I feel like drug names are just like people put a bunch of letters together and try to make it as hard as possible. So we'll be looking for the next one to come out. That's where I started following you guys. I guess the algorithm, with me being a pharmacist, popped up like, hey, medical terminology, and I just fell out laughing the first time I saw it. Because if you guys hadn't seen it, and we'll put some links up, but she holds up a card, and it has a medical term, and it's it's something crazy, hard to pronounce, something very technical, and Justin will like say it in his Southern way. For the record, Courtnee's in Alabama, right?
Roll Tide.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Could have done without that. I'll edit that part out. And I'm in Georgia next door, go Dogs. But y'all won this year, so I can't say a whole lot. But I love that. And him guessing the meaning of that medical term, because let's face it, some of those are just hilarious.
And that's I don't know how they come up with the names.
I don't either. But hey, maybe a drug one's in your future. That'd be cool.
We have gotten requests. We'll have to do it. I'll make sure that's our next one.
Love it. What I really liked about you is I followed your content and all of this, but then you begin to post more about your faith. And so that's, it's kind of where my worlds meet. I'm a pastor and I'm a pharmacist. That really, hey, the algorithm actually worked there, because that's really the kind of stuff I want to see. Mm-hmm. And that immediately kind of drew me to the Stagners, because I'm like, hey, man, look, she's sharing about her faith. She's sharing about turning her life around. She's talking about turning her life over to the Lord, always posting encouraging, positive Christian messages out there. So I'd love to just give you an opportunity to talk about what your faith means to you, and kind of where did that shift happen in your life?
Okay. My faith is the utmost important thing. Without faith, I would just be nothing. I have been without faith. I've been without Jesus Christ in my life, and I do not ever want to go back there again.
Yeah.
And that shift really happened. I grew up Catholic in the Catholic Church. I went to Catholic school. And if you don't know much about the Catholicism, that type of religion is a religion of works. Mm-hmm. And so I was constantly working so hard for something I would never be able to attain. And so when I was in my early 20s, when I became a nurse and had money to actually go out and party, I partied. Mm-hmm. And it got me in a dark place. And I said, well, why not? Because according to this doctrine, I'm never going to go to heaven. So I might as well just, eat, drink, be merry, for tomorrow I die. So I had, I got into some really dark, my drinking or whatever, it got really bad when I was in my 20s. And that's kind of where it carried over, because especially being a nurse, it's like, especially critical care, you see some really dark stuff. And it's like, that was just my coping mechanism. My dad died about that time. Now, again, I was by myself, bad relationships, got in a really dark spot. I knew there was a God, but I wanted so badly for there not to be, because I knew what I was doing was not right. I was not living, and it just followed me, that conviction. And I just was like, oh God, just go away, please.
Yeah, leave me alone. Right?
I'm feeling so bad about this. Got married, still was not saved. I claimed to be, because I wasn't as bad as I was. Got saved when I married Justin and met his grandfather. His grandfather was one of the best Christian men I've ever met. And he finally got an opening one day, because I started going back to the Catholic Church, because we had a child at this point. And I was like, I want my child to be raised into a household of faith. Catholic. I just went over there and I was like, I have a void in me. I go to church, I say these prayers, and it's like, I don't feel any closer to God. And he said, well, that's not how you get closer to God. He said, now I have an opportunity to talk to you. Are you open to this conversation? And he shared the gospel with me. He was like, please come to church with me. And it's a house church. All of these people from Mississippi to Florida meet in this little house, my pastor's house, because they all came from different churches and they all came from different doctrines, and they could not find a home. And this was their home. So he's like, come to my church and let's just see what you think about it. Mm-hmm. He was like, my pastor is so good. So I went, and it was like, he was talking. I mean, it was like Mandarin Chinese. I was like, what are you talking about? And it was just plain gospel. Yeah. Plain gospel. And I was just like, I don't understand any of this.
Just so foreign.
So It was so foreign. I had never heard of being saved. I had never heard of salvation. I was like, you've got to go to confession. You've got to do this, got to do that. And I was like, what he's saying doesn't make sense in my head. It's too easy. That just means I can sin all I want. If Jesus died for me, it just means I can just go on living how I've been living. And he was like, no. He was like, just pray about it. And I'm continuing to pray just keep coming. One day, I had stopped going for a while, and then all of a sudden it was like a light came on. I went back, and every single thing made sense to me. And it was like, really, when God says that his words are foolish to the lost people, mm-hmm. So It is so true. Until he opens your eyes and you can hear the word and it can actually go down into your heart and you accept that as truth. It is, I mean, I experience for myself. I understand. I feel very bad for the people who are not saved, because what I'm saying to you, I'm sharing, it doesn't make sense because I've been in your shoes. They are understanding exactly what they are capable of understanding. Until God opens their eyes, they are never going to understand. And then once I was hardcore, and it's like when you first get saved, you want everybody to be saved. So you just gospel, just aggravating people to death about it. And my family, still being Catholic, are like, okay, we can't deal with you anymore. And so I talked to my pastor, and he was like, just reel it in a little bit. He was like, all you can do is plant a seed and let God water it. And if it's meant to come about, that's what's going to happen. And so finally, I just got to where I just let my light show. And my friends and my family, you're different. And it makes me feel so good when people look at me and look at my life now. When they change the way they talk around me, they don't share the same things. I'm like, something has happened in my life that shows that I'm not about that anymore. And that is the biggest compliment, honestly. You could say you miss the old me, but that old me was headed straight to hell.
Wow.
And I want everybody to feel the joy, even on my darkest days, that I'm like, I still say there's Jesus Christ. And if today is the worst day, I'm still going to be with him one day.
Wow.
And that's all I can tell people. My joy says it all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'm doing the Bible recap, reading through the Bible this year. And Tara Lee Cobble always says he's where the joy is.
Yes.
And I would wholeheartedly agree with that.
Absolutely.
Courtney, I feel like I've been to church. Man, that was, I love hearing your testimony, because what you've described is the power of the gospel.
Yes.
To take us from where we are, which is this feeling, and I relate so much to every bit of your story, because the circumstances were different and the areas of life were different, but it's very similar. I thought I wasn't Catholic. I was raised in the Baptist church from the time I tell people I had a drug problem. Got drugged to church in the morning, or Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. Anytime the doors open, I was there. But I was in that same trap of feeling like, okay, well, church equals following Jesus equals going to church, checking the boxes. Try to be on your best behavior, but you're never good enough. So does it really even matter?
Right.
And that's where I found myself as a young adult, just graduated from pharmacy school. I had the job that I wanted. I had the new car. I had the house. I had the girl. I had all the, the white picket fence, all the things that the world tells us we need to be happy. But something was missing inside of me. And I love how you went to your pastor and you said, there's this void in me. And I'd like to kind of sit there a minute, because I think there's something really powerful to that. What does that look like to have that void, but then try to fill it with all these other things? I know I did that. And you described you did that too.
It's just temporary pleasure. I would fill it with things and people and bad relationships over and over again. I felt like I needed people, and that person I needed was so far away because I was not accepting of him. That person is Jesus. But all these things, and it was like, yeah, I could, go party, have fun. I have a really bad habit. Even now, I find my fulfillment in education. I have to have degrees.
Yeah.
And I have to sit back and think, am I doing this for my self-satisfaction, feeling like I have to make myself valuable in this way, or am I doing it because I want to better something else? And I have to really talk about it, because otherwise I get very prideful and think that that's why I'm here on this earth, is to get all these high accolades. But that void is just temporary. All these things, it's like the next day you wake up and you're like, okay, and then what? And then what? And it's like there's an end to these things. With Christ, there's no end. It's like every day you're being sanctified. You should be getting closer and closer. And I have my bad days. Lord knows I do.
We all do. Yep.
But I just feel like my love for him grows even more every single day. And That's what I love.
And that's the thing, for the listeners out there, you may be trying to fill that void with like you said, success. I see a lot of men in particular. I feel like, if I can just reach that next level, that next promotion, that next thing, then I'll finally be satisfied. Or, you're right, with the degrees or the certifications or all these things, if I can put enough letters beside my name, then eventually, maybe then I'll be satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
Or, if I can just get the latest, if I can just get that new car, or that bigger house, or, we always feel like satisfaction and fulfillment is just on the other side of something that we're chasing.
Yep.
But the truth is
Absolutely.
that unless we find our satisfaction, say that again, George is coming out, my satisfaction and fulfillment in Jesus, then we're always going to be disappointed. And I found that too, man. I had my college days when I was a commuter for undergrad. you only get into so much when you're living at home and commuting. But the first time I went off to college, I had those times where I'm like, hey, nobody's watching me. Nobody is checking on me to see what I'm doing. So, I'm going to do what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that real moment of rebellion that I think everybody hits. But sometimes that sticks with us, doesn't it?
Yeah, I do not. I have a lot of regrets for the people that I've hurt.
Yeah.
And I've tried since I have gone through as many contacts as I can still reach those people. I'm like, I'm not that same person anymore. I'm so sorry for hurting you. I understand how you would feel, and I'm so sorry. Mm-hmm. But I do not regret the experience, because that experience led me to being saved, to want to be saved. Yeah. You have to, sometimes you have to want to be saved sometimes.
Yeah.
However, God will pluck somebody out just randomly. I've seen it happen too.
That's right. That's right. And, and I think back, and a lot of times, it's not like confession hour, but I'm just going to say it because I think somebody out there can probably relate. I was doing a lot of things I had no business doing, but yet calling myself a Christian. And, I think back to like, what kind of example was I setting? Presenting myself as this person that follows Christ, but yet really, I just went to church, if that makes sense. I went to church, but I still lived my life the way I wanted to live it. And it wasn't until I reached that point. Sometimes we just got to get fed up, don't we?
Yeah.
We've got to be fed up of how we're living. We just have to reach some people call it the end of us. I've tried to do it my way. I've tried everything that I can, and I can't do it anymore. And that was kind of my moment of surrender, where I said, God, I can't do this on my own anymore. I don't know what else to do. And I felt this whisper to my heart, you don't have to do it by yourself. I'm here to help you. Man, what would we do without him? And what did we do without him?
Stuff, horrible stuff. When you finally surrender and say, I can't do it anymore, God's finally like, okay, thank you for realizing it. I've been trying to pull you in, and you just kind of go the other way. I don't know if you've ever watched the Chosen series. Have you ever watched that? The fish at the beginning where they turn colors and go the other way. That is such an amazing picture of just the world. And then, it literally is like a fish. But the day that my eyes were opened, I can't tell you the day. It was like over a year period, but finally the day that it clicked, I was like, I get it now. Like this does seem so much easier than what I was doing. But people that think, I was thinking, what you're saying, if the gospel's true, then I can go continue living my life the way I want to, and I'll just be forgiven. But being in Christ makes you want to change your life, because you want to bring other people by your example into the body. And so,
yeah, 100%. And we talk about it, I know, a lot with the group of people that I pastor. And what we say is this: if you're living for Christ, you're going to look different than this world. And that was my thing, was I just didn't look different than the world. I was claiming the name of Christ, but my lifestyle looked no different. Mm-hmm. I'm embarrassed for the words that I used when I was frustrated at work. You know how it is in healthcare. Some people just assume cuss you out and then smile at you.
Absolutely.
And I would let that get, I would just, when I was first married to my wife, she would say, I can tell it's your weekend coming up to work. I would work every other weekend. And I would say, how's that? She said, because of the way that you're acting. Like I'd just get on edge. And, I'm embarrassed of a lot of that. Mm-hmm. But I kind of needed to go through that in order to get fed up with it, so that my eyes could be open to see God for what he is. And he is a difference maker. He's a miracle worker in our hearts. And there's absolutely nothing we can do to save ourselves. We need him to do every bit of it. And your story so beautifully illustrates that. And then, you talked about, I'm interested in the house church thing because that's very, very fascinating to me. I've looked a lot into stuff like that too.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about how that works and how that looks, because that's a little different model of doing church. But, that kind of reminds me of the first church in Acts, right? They were meeting in homes and that kind of thing.
Yep. The name of he actually does streaming. His name is Troy Clemens, if anybody's interested. But it's
Put a plug in for Grandpa.
Yeah. But it's called the Berean Bible Church, and we're supposed to be like the Bereans who went and studied the Word and didn't take anybody's, spoken word as truth. They went through the scriptures. But my pastor actually grew up Catholic as well in Mississippi.
Interesting.
He became a Baptist preacher. And when he got saved, he started preaching the gospel. And his co-pastor did not like that because it was people were complaining that they felt like they were sinners. So they kicked him out of the church because they were losing money. So he started his own church, and then slowly but surely he'd go to like Bible conferences, and it just really became like word of mouth. And I started going. My husband goes with me because of me, obviously. His grandparents went. Just all walks of life. They all met through word of mouth. These people, you need to come here. You're not, they would just talk about how unhappy they were, because there's a lot of motivational speaking buildings on Sundays.
Yes.
Where it is a gospelless sermon. That is one thing that I love about my church, is that every single Sunday, we have Wednesday night too, he draws a timeline and the cross is in the center of the whiteboard. Everything leads back to the cross as it should. And so the gospel is the center of the message. And so he actually had to buy another house because our congregation got so big.
That's a good problem to have.
Right. And so now we've got actual duties in our little, we've got a secretary, a treasurer, we've got all these elders. We've got people appointed as elders now.
Yeah,
and
cool.
I don't know. I've just seen it blow up. I've been going there since 2019, 2020.
Yeah.
And it's just blown up. And it's one of the best blessings that I've ever received in my life. And it works out for us, and people continue to come, and we love it. We love it.
Well, and you're fruit of it. And, I think that speaks a lot. To all the listeners out there, find you a Bible-believing church.
Yes.
A Bible-teaching church, a church that teaches Christ and Christ crucified, that preaches the message of Jesus. Because you're right, there's so many churches, and it's tough for churches right now because, our congregants could pull up any of the best pastors in the world and live stream them on a Sunday and not get involved in the local church. And they could say they had their church, right? So I want to talk about that in just a second too, but it's tough. But then also there's a lot of, and I'm not picking on any church in particular, but there's a lot of even mega churches out there, and their sermon is going to be like the 5 C's of happiness. It's like, it's nothing, and you listen to it and it sounds good. It kind of tickles the ears, and you say, I could really use that. That's useful message. But I don't go to church to find useful things. I go to church to worship God, to fellowship with other believers, and in order to be, fed the word, that's going to help me on my journey. It's going to help me grow. Those are the reasons we go to church, not so we can find something useful that's going to, it's going to help us like a self-help thing. What difference has attending a Bible-based gospel preaching church made in your life as you've made this transition to not following Jesus to following Jesus? I guess what I'm asking is, what difference does a church make, or do you believe that you can just get everything you need from the TV and just cut it off and you've been to church?
Now, I'm not saying that I have never live streamed my pastor.
Well, yeah, right.
However,
yeah. But as a general rule, yeah.
God tells us, do not forsake fellowshipping together,
the meeting together,
which is one of the reasons why my pastor during COVID, when they were saying you couldn't meet, he said, I will listen to the government until it goes against God's word, and this is not equaling up. So we're going to continue to meet. He can shut us down. John MacArthur did the same thing, and they threatened to turn his water off. But that God will reward you for listening to him. And I went to a lot of churches. I started going to mega churches and listening to their sermons and things. And I felt so good about myself. And I always say, when you feel so good about yourself, when you leave a church, you probably didn't hear the gospel.
Yeah.
I want to feel about this big.
Yep.
Actually, this big
so that
probably
God
too much.
can look this big, right?
Right. I want to feel less about myself and more about God every time I leave.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
And I know that and I have people, I'm just there for the praise and worship music. And half of the time it's man-centered. All the new age stuff is man-centered songs. That's why I love My Church Sings the Old Hymns that is focused on the gospel. And it's just sad because people are thinking that they're getting what they need and they're following Jesus. And I'm like, but you're not following the gospel. You're supposed to be a changed person. And y'all just like, there's a church down the street that is advertising on their Facebook that they're having movie nights on Sunday nights instead of a worship service. And I'm like, that is so sad. What movies are you showing?
Yeah, right.
Tortured for Christ or what? Like, are you showing?
If it's not,
no, they're watching, Hocus Pocus or something for the kids. And I'm just like, this world is just not
the same.
No. So if you go to church and you don't hear a bit about Christ crucified or the gospel or anything, it could be Bible verses, but if it doesn't go right back to the cross, you're not getting what you need on a Sunday.
Yeah, you can take verses and prove whatever you want to prove.
Exactly.
But you're so right, because there's a big difference in actually belonging to a church as well. We need each other.
Yes.
And, I don't know where I would be without some of the fellow believers that I'm a part of. We ask each other questions all week. We don't just see each other on Sunday and say, see you later. We're in communication all week, and, we're talking about different things that come up in our lives and how do we approach this? How do we navigate it? We need each other. We're not made to do this Christian walk alone. It's not just a us and Jesus thing, even though, he does save us personally. But we're supposed to walk this out. You're right. Don't neglect the meeting together of the saints, like so many of you are accustomed to doing. There is this temptation today, and I believe that it's the temptation where all other temptations come from, the devil, to kind of trick you into thinking you don't need a church. Just you and Jesus. That's all you need. But how easy it is to pry you away when that's the case. And so you mentioned too several times about getting into God's word, and I think that's another thing that I struggle with today. So the group of people I pastor are young adults. And so it's 18 to 30-ish. Right after youth group, we tend to lose a lot of people after they graduate from high school. That's where I kind of found the Lord too, is right after college. And I'm like trying to make my faith my own, right? I'm taking it from what I grew up believing to, all right, why do I believe what I believe?
Right.
And is it because I really believe it or just because someone told me that?
Mm-hmm.
There's this wrestling that takes place, and I think that's normal. But what I see is, I don't know how to call it anything else. It's biblical illiteracy. There's a lack of understanding of God's word. And, we need a Bible-believing church, a Bible-believing pastor, a gospel-preaching preacher in order to kind of help us understand some of those things too. And if you just listen to some things here and there, and really I'll say this, if the only scripture you're getting is on Sundays, then something's wrong too, because that was me for a large part of my life. My Bible reading plan was whatever the preacher preached on Sunday.
Yeah.
That's what I read, and then I'd close it and I wouldn't open my Bible again until the next Sunday.
Yeah.
What do you do on a daily basis to kind of stay rooted in the word and to kind of help you grow and understand more about God from his word?
So first thing is, I used to do the same thing as well. Sundays was my only God.
Yeah.
But he said, give us this day our daily bread, and we don't just eat on Sundays. So you got to eat every day.
Amen.
So I'm also doing the Bible recap. This is probably my 5th or 6th year reading the Bible all the way through.
Awesome.
And it's like and I love the Old Testament. Most people hate the Old Testament.
Me too. Yeah.
I love the Old Testament because once you see the truth in it, every single page bleeds. You see Jesus on every single page. And I have a Bible channel. And because I fell off, during my beginning, I started a sobriety journey this year I was actually, I don't know if anybody listening is familiar with the Floribama in on Orange Beach.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the Florida-Alabama line. It's a bar.
Mm-hmm.
But they have beach church, like church on the water on Easter Sundays. And we were at the beach, and I had just, I was a Christian. I was saved, but I still drank and indulged and did all these things. And I just felt so bad. And something that pastor said that Sunday, just, you hear it from the same person over and over again. It's just like a broken record, but it took somebody else saying, you're replacing Jesus with other things in your life, and whether that be drinking or gambling or whatever. And I was like, I am. And so I have not drank since Easter. Well, the day before Easter Sunday this year.
Awesome.
And I said, my accountability, my reading the Bible was kind of on the back burner. And so I made a vow that I was going to do better. And so I started a Bible channel on my own Instagram. Anybody could join. And so we just have those readings, and I kind of do like, it was videos, and now I kind of do like a voice note about the main points. I have a commentary. I think it was a Matthew Henry commentary I use. And then I have the Tara Lee Cobble's commentary from Bible Recap, kind of put them together. And
that's a good combination. I love that. You got Matthew Henry old school, then you got Tara Lee Cobble modern, and you put them together, man, you can't go wrong with that.
And I will sometimes there are not opposing, but different views about certain things. I will say both of them whenever I'm doing a commentary. And then I will say, but according to this past scripture, I believe my opinion is that it means this. However, if you have a different opinion, let me know. I always tell them, just like Tara Lee Cobble says, don't scream where the Bible whispers. Don't try to make a doctrine out of something when if God wanted us to know, it would be laid out, just like his law. If it was that important to our walk with him or for our salvation or whatever, he's going to make it very clear to us. It's not going to be vague. And so that's what I try to tell people. And that's where a lot of these silly doctrines come out of, is people are taking a verse out of context,
random,
and running with it.
Absolutely. And that's the thing I mentioned earlier. You can take a verse and make it say whatever you want to. You can search for proof texts and you can find them, but that's not what the whole context is saying. And that's what I love about reading the whole Bible. For much of my life, it was bits and pieces. And I'll tell you this, Courtney, like I was probably in my 30s before I could start putting big things together. Like, how did the Israelites end up in Egypt? Well, it's the whole David thing, the whole Joseph thing, right?
Yep.
And so it wasn't until, I was later in life, 10 years ago maybe, when I finally began to put those things together, that other people who read the whole Bible got a lot earlier. But because I only read it in bits and pieces, it wasn't there for me.
Right.
And the whole Bible becomes so much more real when you start seeing the entire story.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. All those Old Testament books, all of them point to Jesus. And if you read it with that lens, I'm convinced you'll see the Old Testament in a whole new way. I'm with you. I love the Old Testament. Used to, when I first started preaching, I would preach mostly on the New Testament. But here lately, Old Testament's so much more rich. When you see it through the lens of what's it saying about Jesus. How is it pointing us to Jesus?
My favorite story is Elijah in the prophets of Baal, where he was mocking their gods. And he was like, maybe he's asleep. Maybe you should yell a little louder.
Wake him up. Wake him up.
The Bible, the prophets had a sense of humor as well.
Right.
You can find all kinds of comedy through there because you just start laughing. You're like, yeah,
absolutely.
This is hilarious.
And Jesus did too. And that's something I've discovered in later years too, was his humanity and his sense of humor. There's just ways he could have done things differently, but he chose to do them the way that he did, almost with a sense of humor. And so I just want to encourage you out there, hey, if you want to know God, know his word. If you're having trouble understanding who is God, what's he about, we're called to love the Lord. And part of loving the Lord is loving his word. I saw a quote right before I jumped on here on social media somewhere that said, you can't love Jesus without loving the word of Jesus, or the words of Jesus. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. And it's one of those things too, where the more you do something, the more you want to do it.
Yes.
I found that to be true in my life, because there's been ebbs and flows where, can we just be honest and say, I don't always feel like reading my Bible. There's days where I'm just like, I'd rather just go ahead and get this other thing over with, and I'll do that later. But you get out of the habit really easily. The less you do something, the less you want to do it. But the more you read the Bible, the more you'll want to read the Bible. the more it starts to come alive to you, the more you begin to understand. And there's no greater feeling than knowing that you're reading the words of God, and through his Holy Spirit, he's speaking to you exactly where you are. I love it. And you can't get enough of it. And the same thing with prayer. If you struggle with prayer, and we hadn't gotten into this much, but pray.
Yeah.
Like, you want to get good at praying? Pray. Want to practice praying? Pray. That's how you get better. You just pray. The more you do it, the more comfortable you get, and the more you want to do it. And the opposite is also true. The less you do it, the less you want to. So you want to change some patterns. If you want to start growing closer to God, then just start doing the work. We're not saved by works. We're not saved by anything that we do, but those are some responsibilities we have as believers to stay connected to God. One of my favorite passages is out of John 15, where Jesus says, "I am the vine and you are the branches. Remain in me and I in you, and you will bear much fruit." And the emphasis there is on the abiding. The command is not to bear fruit. A lot of times we know that we ought to be Christ-like. We know that we ought to look more like Jesus. But the command in that passage is not to make the fruit on your own. The command is to abide in Jesus, and through his transforming power, then you will bear the fruit of Jesus. And so I love it. Courtnee, your story is a blessing. Your testimony is a true story of Jesus taking someone who was lost and allowing them to have their eyes opened, their life changed, and you're living it out every day. You're an encouragement to me. I love watching your content. I love watching your content. It's always positive. It's always encouraging. And you always give God the glory. And I just want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. You're making a difference. God's put you in the platform that you're in order to make a difference in somebody's life, because you're living it out loud. And when you do that, you don't have a clue how many people are watching you, watching your example, and saying, "Hey, I want some of that too." And so I'm proud of you. I'm proud of the journey you're on. I'm proud of you for sharing your faith story. And I appreciate you being here with us today. How can my listeners find out more about you and Justin? I know you're on several different platforms, but what's the best way to find you and learn more, maybe even about the Bible group that you teach?
I am on Instagram. It's at Courtnee Stagner. And then I'm on TikTok as well. I post mostly on Instagram, but Courtnee Stagner 12 is my TikTok handle. And my Bible group is on my Instagram bio.
Awesome. Y'all check out Justin too. He's a hilarious guy. And
at Justin Stagner on Instagram.
Yeah. And he's doing shows and stuff now, right?
Yep. He's on tour. His next show is in Naples, Florida, I believe. So this next week sometime, but he is hitting it and getting it. He is on the road all the time. And,
are you with him a lot, or are you?
I'm not a traveler. I stay at home, but I am going. I will be at the San Diego show because I've never been all the way to the West Coast. So I'm going with him for that.
I'll be looking at y'all's calendars. If you get close to Middle Georgia, I'll be there.
I'm sure we will.
Yeah. Awesome, Courtnee. Bless you. Bless your family. Excited about you and the little one to come.
Thank you.
Look forward to staying connected.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the RevRx podcast. We hope you enjoyed what you heard today, and if so, we'd love it if you would hit that subscribe button so that you'll never miss a new episode from us. Also, feel free to leave us reviews and comments, as we'd love to hear from you. Be blessed and be the very best you.